Hey guys. Tonight, we begin with a time when catching a cold was the least of your worries. It's Europe, somewhere in the mid-14th century. The world is crowded, filthy, and just one unlucky cough away from disaster. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just stepped into the deadliest pandemic in human history. You arrive, quite literally, with the worst possible timing. No, really, if there were a list of horrors to avoid, this one would be somewhere between inside Pompeii, August 79 AD, and anywhere in Europe, 1347 to about 1351. You've somehow landed smack in the middle of a bustling medieval city that smells like optimism, roasted meat, and something I can only describe as boiled despair. Your shoes, which are a perfectly respectable pair of modern sneakers, are already regretting every choice they've ever made. The street is not so much a street, as it is an unholy alliance between mud, manure, and a suspicious fluid trickling from somewhere up ahead. You step over it, or at least you think you do, but the mud here has the suction strength of 1,000 tiny medieval hands. And there's a moment where you're pretty sure the city is trying to eat your left foot. Lovely weather, says a man selling eels from a wooden barrel, because apparently that's a thing here. His grin is missing at least 5 teeth, but he makes up for it by winking at you, with the kind of energy that suggests he hasn't winked at another living soul in a while. You mumble something that sounds vaguely like, and keep walking. Here's the thing they didn't tell you before you signed up for this little time. Hop. You're in a city where personal hygiene is a concept. People bathe maybe once a year, if they feel like it. The air smells like wood smoke, wet fur, and a faint undercurrent of something worse. Something that smells like the kind of sickness you don't want to catch. But we'll get to that. Oh, we will. You pass a woman carrying a basket of bread. She looks you up and down like you're some strange new breed of animal. Which, to be fair, you are. Your hoodie, jeans, and the strange glowing rectangle in your pocket. That's your phone. Not that it works here, are suspicious enough to get you burned at the stake if the wrong person notices. So you pull your hood tighter and pretend you're just another poor soul, trying to make it through the day without catching, well, you know. The streets are narrow, the houses leaning over you like they're whispering secrets. Timber frames, plaster walls, and roofs made of thatch or tile, all a bit lopsided, as if the buildings themselves have had a few too many mugs of ale. From above, you can hear the sound of someone dumping a bucket of something into the street. You don't look up in time. Congratulations. You've just been christened with what is almost certainly yesterday's chamber pot. Welcome to medieval Europe. Now, I could tell you exactly what's about to happen here. I could warn you that in just a matter of weeks, people will be falling to the ground mid-step, clutching their bellies, their skin blotching purple like bad wine stains, their breath rattling like a broken church bell. But where's the fun in that? No. You get to find out the hard way. You stop in front of a market stall selling spices. The smell is intoxicating. Cinnamon, pepper, cloves. Expensive stuff. Worth more than gold here. The merchant looks like he hasn't smiled since the reign of the last king, but he leans in and whispers, from the east. You don't know it yet, but that east he's talking about is the very place where the thing that's going to end about half this city began. And it's here now. Moving quietly, patiently. Across the square, a group of children play with a hoop, their laughter bouncing off the walls. One of them coughs. Just once. Nobody notices. The sound of a church bell drifts through the air, solemn and heavy. Normally, it's for mass or a wedding, but lately it's been tolling more often, for other reasons. You keep moving, weaving between carts loaded with hay and barrels of ale. Somewhere nearby, a man is shouting about a miracle cure for everything from gout to broken hearts. You consider buying it, just in case, but the cure appears to be a jar of something that looks suspiciously like crushed snails. You pass. The sun dips behind the rooftops, casting long shadows through the streets. A cold wind stirs, carrying with it the faintest whiff of something metallic and wrong. Somewhere far away, there's a scream, sharp, brief, and quickly silenced. Nobody reacts. That's just how it is here. And you, poor, sweet, doomed you. You're thinking, well, this isn't so bad. Oh, it will be. By the time you realize just how bad, it'll already be too late. But for now, the city still hums with the illusion of normal life. Merchants haggle, bakers haul trays of bread from smoky ovens, and somewhere down the street a fiddler is playing a tune that sounds like it's missing 3 notes, but still somehow works. You wander further, trying not to breathe too deeply. Every inhale feels like pulling history straight into your lungs. Wood smoke, horse sweat, damp straw, and the faint sour tang of yesterday's fish. It's the sort of smell that clings to you, settling into your hair and clothes, until you carry the city with you whether you want to or not. The cobblestones beneath your feet are uneven, slick from the day's rain, and you're constantly sidestepping puddles that are either water or something far less innocent. A cart creaks by, loaded with wool sacks and driven by a man with the posture of someone who has spent his entire life fighting gravity and losing. The wool smells faintly of sheep, though, faintly, is generous. It's as if an entire flock is trailing behind you. As you turn a corner, you nearly collide with a monk. His robe is rough wool, the color of wet sand, and his sandals slap against the stones as he passes. His head is shaved in a tonsure, a ring of hair like a sad little crown, and he's muttering prayers under his breath. You catch only one word: pestis. You're not fluent in Latin, but you don't need a translation for that one. You try to convince yourself you misheard, that maybe he said something else. Festus, maybe, like a feast. That would be nice. But then you remember, this is not a feasting kind of month. Over the next few days, you start to notice the little things. A woman you saw selling apples on Monday is gone by Wednesday. A group of men are hammering together a wooden frame in the square, the kind you might use to hang banners, except no banners go up. Instead, it's a scaffold for the city's physician to stand on while shouting advice to the crowd. "Avoid bad air!" he yells, waving his arms like a man who just discovered air exists. "Carry flowers! Burn herbs!" Someone asks him which herbs, and he answers, "Any herbs." This inspires confidence in no one. You see your first rat on Thursday. Not that you've never seen a rat before, but this one moves differently. It's too bold, darting between people's feet, as if it knows nobody's going to bother chasing it. You watch it pause, its whiskers twitching, and for a second you swear it looks at you. Then it disappears into a crack in the wall. By Friday, you start coughing. Just once, and it's probably the smoke, but still, you notice. Saturday morning, the church bells toll 3 times before you've even had your breakfast. The eel seller from your first day isn't at his stall anymore. Someone says he died in the night, and you feel a pang of something you can't quite name. Guilt, disbelief, maybe all 3, and still, the city moves on. Bread is baked, carts roll past, children play in the streets. Life goes on stubbornly, even as something unseen threads its way through the alleys and markets, slipping into homes like a shadow. You wake on Sunday to find a smell in the air that's different from the usual bouquet of medieval city life. It's sharper, heavier, the scent of sickness and sweat and something metallic underneath. You follow it, because apparently you haven't learned the first rule of survival here, which is if it smells wrong, walk the other way. At the edge of the square, a man is lying on the ground. His skin is pale and mottled, and there's a swelling under his arm the size of a pigeon's egg. People stand around him in a loose circle, nobody getting too close. Someone mutters the word bubo, and a cold trickle runs down your spine. Because you've just seen your first case of the Black Death. The crowd around the sick man shifts uncomfortably, like a ring of stones about to collapse. Nobody steps forward, but nobody runs either. This is not because they're brave. It's because they're trying very hard to convince themselves that what they're seeing isn't what they're seeing. Humans have been doing that for centuries. If I pretend the problem doesn't exist, maybe the problem will politely leave. But the Black Death is not polite. The man groans, curling in on himself, and you catch a glimpse of his face. His lips are dry and cracked, his eyes sunken so deep, it's as if his skull is already reclaiming them. His skin is slick with sweat despite the cool morning air. The bubo under his arm pulses faintly with each heartbeat. You can see it moving, which is not something you should ever see outside of horror stories. A priest edges closer, holding a small wooden cross like it's a dagger. He mutters a blessing, then quickly steps back as the man coughs. It's not a normal cough, it's deep, wet, and carries the faintest pink mist in the air. You instinctively step back, too, your hands curling into fists at your sides. And then the sound comes. From somewhere down the street, the slow, deliberate ring of a bell. It's not the church bell, it's smaller, thinner, carried by hand. A boy walks past with it, his eyes fixed on the cobblestones. Ding, ding, ding. The plague bell. You've heard the stories. It's rung to warn that the dead are being brought out. You tell yourself you're not going to follow him. You absolutely tell yourself this. And yet, here you are, keeping a careful distance, because curiosity is a stubborn parasite. The bell leads you to a side street where two men in long, dark robes are lifting a body onto a cart. The robes are heavy, the hoods deep, their faces hidden entirely behind grotesque masks, long beaked noses stuffed with herbs, glass lenses over the eyes. They look less like doctors and more like the nightmare version of a stork. The smell hits you next. Sharp vinegar, damp feathers, something acrid that burns your nostrils. They've soaked themselves in it, hoping it will keep the bad air away. It won't. But it does keep you from getting too close. One of them glances at you. Or maybe he doesn't. It's hard to tell with those glass eyes. But you suddenly feel like you're the one under inspection, like he's mentally noting you down as future customered. The cart creaks forward, the bell rings again, and you watch as they disappear around the corner, taking the body, and your last shred of comfort, with them. That night, you can't sleep. The city is quieter than usual, and in that silence you hear things you wish you couldn't. The faint cough from somewhere below your window, the shuffle of feet in the alley, the squeak of rats skittering across beams overhead. You lie awake until the sky lightens, telling yourself that the people here have survived wars, famines, winters so cold they had to burn furniture. Surely they'll survive this. The next day, you wake to find a red mark painted on the door of the house across the street. The red mark across the street isn't just paint. It's a sentence. A warning. A death knell written in cheap pigment. You watch the morning sun catch on it, turning it into something too bright, too alive, for what it represents. It's not a mark that invites help. It's one that commands distance. Two women in headscarves shuffle past, their eyes darting from the mark to the ground, like the sight of it might somehow cling to them if they linger too long. You've seen how people talk in whispers now. Voices carry disease, they say. Breath carries death. So everyone keeps their words tucked in their throats like contraband. You wander the market square later, because you're still not convinced this thing is everywhere. Markets are supposed to be noisy, shouting, haggling, laughing, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Today, it's wrong. Half the stalls are closed. The others are manned by pale, faced sellers standing a little too far back from their goods, letting customers handle things themselves. A fishmonger coughs into his sleeve, and 3 people abandon the queue without a word. You think about the red mark. How does it get there? Who decides? You don't have to wander for long. On the far edge of the square, you see him. The warden. Not a man you'd call warm in the best of times. He's got a small bucket of paint and a stiff, bristled brush, and he's working methodically, door to door, leaving that scarlet streak like a butcher marking meat. You want to ask him how he knows which houses are doomed. You don't. You just keep walking, because the man's brush drips in a way that makes your throat feel tight. By the 3rd week, you notice the carts. They used to come only at night. Now they rattle down the streets at midday, pulled by thin, sweating horses, wooden wheels clattering over cobblestones like bones knocking together. The men driving them no longer ring the plague bell. There's no point. Everyone can hear them, everyone can see them, and there's no one left who needs warning. You try to tell yourself it's not that bad. The baker is still open. The church still holds mass. You still see children playing in the alleys. their laughter oddly defiant. But then you see one of those same children a few days later, lying still under a sheet on a cart, and you can't decide which is worse, the grief or the speed of it. The priests start coming more often, wearing expressions that say they're not sure whether they're saving souls or just escorting them. They hand out little packets of dried herbs, rosemary, sage, lavender, tell you to keep them in your pockets, hang them from your bed, sniff them before you sleep. You do it because it's something to do, even though you can't shake the thought that the plague is probably laughing at your bouquet. At night, you start dreaming about coughing. Not your own, other people's. You hear it behind you in the next room, through the walls. You wake up sweating, half convinced the sound is still there. Sometimes it is. One morning, you decide to walk to the edge of the city, just to see something other than tight streets and painted doors. The air outside the walls is cleaner, sharper. You can smell the river from here, and the faint scent of something burning. There's a field just beyond the far gate, where the grass has been scorched black in wide patches. You see why when you get closer. Piles of clothes, blankets, shoes, all set aflame. They say burning the belongings of the dead will keep the sickness from spreading. But the way the smoke curls, lazy and dark, makes you wonder if it isn't just carrying the plague up into the sky to rain down somewhere else. When you come back, you pass a man sitting alone on a doorstep. His head is bowed, his hands clasped like he's praying, but you can see his lips moving, counting. He's counting the people left in his house. You don't stop to ask how many are gone. The streets start to thin. It's not just the sickness, it's fear. People stay inside, keep shutters drawn, push food through half, open doors with broom handles. There's talk of sealing entire neighborhoods. You laugh when you first hear it. How could they? But a week later, you see it, heavy wooden beams, nailed across the ends of an alley, a guard posted with a spear, the silent houses beyond like teeth locked behind lips. One evening you stand at your window and watch as the sunset paints the rooftops blood red. It's beautiful, but it feels wrong, like the sky is mocking you. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howls. You've noticed there are more dogs lately, fewer owners. By now, you've learned the signs. You see a man touch his neck, pressing at the skin as though feeling for something that isn't there yet. You see a woman pause, mid-step, her breath catching, one hand to her chest. These moments are like stones dropped in your stomach, small, but heavy. You know what comes next. You always know. One day you wake to silence so deep it feels like you've gone deaf. No cars. No footsteps. You go to the window and see why. The warden is gone. There's no one left to mark the doors. The paint is dry, the brush abandoned in the street. The plague doesn't need a man to do its work anymore. It knows the way. You wake up to coughing. Not yours. It's the kind of cough that doesn't belong to a stranger. You know the rhythm of it. The desperate pull for air between each one. It's coming from the next room. For a moment you don't move, because not moving means not confirming. But the sound comes again, sharp and wet, and the silence after is worse. When you open the door, your neighbor Thomas is sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. He's pale enough to look carved from wax, sweat shining along his hairline. He tries to smile at you, because he's polite like that. But his lips split dry and the effort makes him wince. His hands are curled into fists in his lap, and you notice he's hiding them. You don't ask, but you know. The swelling starts in the hands sometimes, then the armpits, then the groin, buboes, they call them. Though you wish you didn't know that word. They say the swellings are black inside when you cut them open. You tell him you'll fetch water, and he nods, like water is going to fix anything. But fetching it gives you an excuse to leave. The well is still open, though there's barely a soul around. You've learned to wrap a cloth over your mouth when you're in public. Not because you think it'll save you, but because people are less likely to turn on you if they can't see you breathing. The bucket creaks as you lower it into the dark, and the sound echoes like something living in the stone shaft. You're halfway back when you see them. Two men you don't recognize, moving down the street with a cart. Not a plague cart, not this time. This one's smaller, covered with a scrap of torn canvas. They stop in front of Thomas's door. One knocks, no answer. They knock again harder. Still nothing. Then they push inside without ceremony. And you hear muffled voices. When they come out, the cart is heavier. You stand there in the street with your bucket, trying to understand how fast it just happened. The days start to dissolve together after that. You don't count them anymore, because numbers don't mean anything now. The only calendar that matters is the smell. Fresh death smells different from days-old death, and you're learning the difference whether you want to or not. The city tries new things. They close the taverns, which, frankly, seems like the cruelest thing you could do in times like this. They tell people to stay sober and clean, which is an optimistic way of saying, please be boring until you die. There's a curfew now, too. If you're caught outside after the church bells ring in the evening, you're fined or beaten, or just thrown in with the sick. They say it's to keep people safe, but you know it's really to make the streets easier to clean in the morning. You start avoiding eye contact with strangers, not out of rudeness. Eye contact makes people remember you exist, and these days anonymity is safer. You walk like a shadow between shadows, and when you pass a cluster of people whispering, you don't slow down to hear the news. News is bad, always bad. Somewhere between the 10th and 12th week, you notice the cats. They've multiplied. You don't see anyone feeding them, but they're getting fat. At first, you think it's because they're catching more rats. Then you realize it's because they're not just catching rats. You sleep less. The nights are louder now, not quieter. You hear doors breaking. You hear wailing, but not the kind people do when they expect comfort. The kind that starts low in the gut and rips upward, until it's just noise. Sometimes you hear singing, which is somehow worse. Groups moving through the streets in the dark, chanting hymns and dragging wooden crosses. Flagellants. Men who think whipping themselves until they bleed will make God stop being angry. You watch from your shutter and wonder if they're right, and then you wonder if it even matters. Food becomes strange. Bread is sour, meat smells odd. All tastes like it's been sitting in the sun. You lower your standards fast. Hunger is persuasive. One morning, you go to buy onions from a woman you've bought from all year. Her stall is empty. No onions. No woman, no sign she was ever there. The stall next to hers is selling jars of vinegar, which the man claims will purify the air in your lungs. If you sniff it deeply every morning, you try it. It just makes your eyes water. The plague reaches your street in earnest in midsummer. You know, because the sounds change. Coughing becomes wheezing. Wheezing becomes quiet. Quiet becomes that strange half-hour of activity when the cart comes. You start sleeping in your clothes, in case you have to leave quickly. You keep your shoes by the door, and you don't take them off unless you're sure you'll be staying. You pack a small bundle of things: a knife, a pouch of coins, a strip of dried meat, a rosary you don't pray over but can't throw away. You keep it by your bed. One night, you hear it again, that cart sound. This time it stops right in front of your door. Your heart jumps in your throat, and you think maybe they've made a mistake, maybe they've confused your house with another. But then you hear your name. Someone outside is calling it. You don't answer. You stand there in the dark, holding your breath while the voice calls again, slower this time. Eventually, it stops. The cart moves on. You don't sleep the rest of the night. The smell changes again by autumn. It's not sharp anymore. It's heavy. It clings to your skin like damp fabric, follows you inside no matter how many herbs you hang over the windows. The air tastes faintly metallic, like blood in the mouth. The church bells ring less now. You used to hear them daily, sometimes hourly. Now it's only once or twice a week. Fewer priests left to ring them, you suppose. A boy starts coming around your door in the mornings. He's not from your street, and he never asks for anything. He just stands a few paces back, looking at your window until you notice him. You can't decide if it's a warning or a threat. The third day he does it, you go outside to speak to him. He runs before you can get a word out. You decide to leave the city. It's not bravery. It's the math. If staying means dying, and leaving might mean dying, you'll gamble on might. But the city doesn't let you just wander out anymore. The gates are watched. The road is dangerous, and the countryside is not exactly handing out welcome baskets. You spend a day, watching the southern gate from the shade of a crumbling wall. You see merchants with papers, soldiers with dogs, a few desperate souls trying to bribe their way through. You see one man dragged away for trying to pass as a corpse on a plague cart. You don't watch what happens to him after. Your best chance will be night. You wait until the moon is thin and the air is thick with fog. You pack your bundle, tie it tight to your back, and take the alleys. The city feels different at night now. Emptier, but also hungrier. Somewhere far off, you hear the hollow slap of feet on stone. Not a walk, not a run. Just that steady, unnatural rhythm that makes you think of something moving without getting tired. You reach the wall near the south side. The bricks are slick, the mortar crumbling. You wedge your fingers into the gaps and pull yourself up, your breath loud in your own ears. At the top, you freeze. On the road below, in the fog, you see a line of figures walking. Slowly, in step. You can't see their faces, but the way they move makes you think they're not entirely whole. You wait until they pass. The sound of their steps fades into the fog, and you drop down on the other side. Your knees ache when you land, but you start walking before the pain has time to convince you to stop. The road out of the city smells cleaner, but not much. You keep your scarf over your mouth, more for comfort than protection. Hours pass. The moon sinks. You tell yourself you'll rest when you find somewhere safe. Then you hear hooves. You step off the road into the wet grass and crouch. The rider appears through the fog. A man in a dark cloak. A mask with a long beak like a heron's face. A plague doctor. The beak is stuffed with herbs, meant to purify the air. But you've heard the stories, most of them don't save anyone. They just count the dying and carry the news. He slows his horse when he sees you. You stay crouched. The horse snorts impatient. The man tilts his head like he's studying you. Then, without a word, he rides on toward the city. You don't move until the sound of hooves fades completely. By dawn, you find a village. Small, quiet, too quiet. The doors are shut, windows shuttered. You knock on 3 of them. No answer on the 4th. A woman opens the door just a crack. She sees your face, then your bundle, then the road behind you. You shouldn't be here, she says. Her voice is flat, tired. I'm looking for food, you tell her. She hesitates, then pushes a small loaf of bread through the gap. Take it. Go. You ask why. Her eyes flick to something over your shoulder. You turn, but the road is empty. When you face her again, the door is shut. You eat half the bread right there in the road. You save the other half for later, though you don't know when later will be. The sky darkens early that evening. The air is heavy and damp, and you keep thinking you hear voices in the wind, low and distant. By the time you find shelter in a collapsed barn, your body is so tired you barely notice the scratching sound in the corner, until you've already laid down. You tell yourself it's a rat. You tell yourself a lot of things. You close your eyes. You dream of Thomas, your neighbor, calling your name from outside your door. When you open it, his eyes are black and his smile is too wide. He says, "It's not over." You wake with the taste of blood in your mouth. Somewhere far off, the cart wheels are rolling again, and you realize you're walking in the same direction they're going. The cart wheels are ahead of you now, not behind. You can't see them, but the sound is there, steady, wooden, as though someone is dragging the weight of an entire street behind them. The fog hangs thick enough that even the treetops vanish into it. You tell yourself it's fine. Fog means they can't see you either. But then the wind shifts, and you smell it. It's not the city smell anymore. It's sharper, wetter, like a butcher's shop left open in the rain. You swallow hard and keep moving, because stopping feels worse than finding out what's ahead. The first thing you see is the back of the cart. It's covered in a tarp that used to be white. You don't need to see under it to know. You've seen enough carts by now to recognize the shape. The man pulling it isn't much older than you. His face is drawn tight, his skin stretched like parchment, his hands wrapped in rags that have long since stopped being clean. He doesn't look back at you, though you're sure he knows you're there. The air around him feels heavier somehow, as if you've stepped into a different kind of weather entirely. You consider calling out. You don't. You follow. The road narrows as it curves, and on one side you can hear a stream running somewhere far below. On the other, The trees grow so close they almost knit together overhead. That's when you notice the sound has changed. The wheels are still turning, but there's a second noise now. A low, wet cough that doesn't belong to you. It takes another 20 steps before you see her. She's sitting upright in the cart, her hair tangled, her dress torn in a dozen places. She's staring straight at you, and for a moment you think maybe she's still alive. Then she smiles. Not the smile of someone glad to see another human being, but the slow, curling kind you might see on a cat that's been watching you for hours. Her lips are cracked. Her teeth are red. The man pulling the cart doesn't react. The woman doesn't blink. You stop walking. The smile widens just enough for you to see that one of her front teeth is missing. You tell yourself this is the part where you turn around and go back. But your legs don't move. And then, she starts humming. It's not a song you know, but it has the same rhythm as the steps you've been taking all day. You realize, with a chill, that you've been walking to that beat without noticing. The cart rounds the bend ahead. The humming fades into the fog. You stand there long enough for the cold to settle into your bones. When you finally move again, the road is different. You can't see the ruts from the wheels anymore. You can't hear the stream. The air smells cleaner, but emptier too, like nothing has been here for a very long time. You keep walking until you reach a crossroads with a single wooden sign. The letters have been carved deep, but they're worn smooth by time. One arm points back toward the city. One arm points towards somewhere you don't recognize. The third arm has no word at all. Just a carved X. You've heard about places like that. The ones so cursed they don't put the name anymore. The wind shifts again. And somewhere far away, you think you hear the humming start up once more. You pick the path with the X. Because of course you do. The other two feel like cheats, like ways to step out of the story early. And you didn't come here for the short version. The dirt is softer on this road. Your boots sink in just enough to make each step a little slower, a little heavier. The trees lean in closer too, the branches knotted like the fingers of old men who have been watching the same thing for centuries. At first, it's just quiet. Not the good kind of quiet. Not the kind you get in a church before the choir starts, or in a library where the dust is older than the books. This is the kind of quiet where your own breathing feels like shouting. Then you notice the shapes ahead. Not moving, not alive. Piles. Heaps. The first is just old wood. The second is a mound of clothes. By the third, you know better than to get close. They've been here a long time. The fabric is stiff, brittle, as though it would crumble if you touched it. There's no smell. Not anymore. But if you close your eyes, you can imagine it. You wish you couldn't. You keep your eyes open. The road curves again, and you see the village. It's not far, maybe a 10-minute walk if you run. But even from here, you know no one's waiting for you. The houses are still standing, but they look wrong. The windows are empty, the doors ajar. No animals move in the fields. No laundry flaps on the lines. You step into the first street and the world changes. There's no sound, no wind. Just you and the rows of buildings staring each other down like soldiers before a battle. You can hear your boots on the dirt. One step, then another, and that's it. You pass a well. The bucket is still tied to the rope halfway down. The crank handle creaks in the breeze that wasn't there a moment ago. And then you see it. The first sign. A cross, painted in thick red lines, slashed across the door of a small house. The paint is cracked and faded, but it's still bright enough to see from across the street. You know what it means. No one went in, no one came out. The next door has the same mark, and the next, and the next. By the fifth house, the red crosses have started to blur together in your vision. You force yourself to look away, and that's when you see her. She's sitting in the doorway of a shop, her head resting on her knees like she just needed to take a break. She looks like she might be asleep. Her hair falls over her face, hiding it completely. You take one step toward her, and her head lifts. Her eyes are glassy, unfocused, but they find you. And for a long, terrible moment, she doesn't move. Then her lips part. You expect to scream or maybe a cough. What you get is worse. She laughs. It's not loud. More like the sound someone makes when they've just heard the end of a joke they don't quite understand. It goes on for too long, though. and your skin prickles with the certainty that she's not laughing at something funny. You take a step back. She stops. Neither of you speaks. Neither of you moves. You realize that if you turn around now, you won't see her again. And if you stay, you might. The choice is yours, but it doesn't feel like it. You keep walking, past her, past the shop, past another row of houses with their red crosses. By the time you reach the far end of the village, you've started counting them without meaning to. 27. That's just what you saw. There's a field beyond. The grass waist, high and swaying in that strange not wind again. A path cuts through it, narrow and almost hidden. It leads uphill, toward the dark shape of a church. The bell tower is leaning to one side, but it's still there. The door hangs open. You step inside, and the smell hits you first. Damp wood, candle wax, something else beneath it. The pews are still lined up neatly, though some are missing pieces. The altar is bare, and then you hear it. The humming. It's faint at first, coming from somewhere above you. You look up. The bell rope sways slowly, though no one is pulling it. The sound grows louder. You realize it's not just one voice now, it's several. All humming the same strange, tuneless song. Your stomach tightens as you notice the staircase in the corner, winding up toward the bell tower. The humming is coming from there. You could leave. You should leave. You take the first step. The stairs are narrow, worn in the middle from years of boots climbing up and down. Each step makes a low wooden groan, and each groan seems to echo just a little too long, as if the sound is traveling somewhere it shouldn't. The humming above doesn't stop. Halfway up, you pass a slit window. A streak of sunlight cuts through the dust like a blade. You pause, not for the light, but for the movement outside. A figure in the field, standing perfectly still. They're turned toward the church. You can't see their face, but you know they're looking at you. You don't linger. The humming grows clearer with every step, and it's worse than you imagined. It's not just tuneless, it's fractured. Like a dozen voices, each forgot how the song went halfway through. But they keep going, over and over, as though repetition will make it whole again. At the top, the air changes. It's warmer here close, and the dust hangs heavy. The bell looms overhead, its surface mottled with green corrosion. The rope sways on its own, not with the rhythm of ringing, but in an idle, almost absent-minded way. And then you see them. 5 figures huddled in a corner of the bell tower. They're dressed in clothes that were once fine, but now are stained, shredded in places. Their faces are pale waxy, the skin stretched thin over cheekbones. Their lips move in time with the humming. Some have their eyes closed. One stares directly at you, unblinking, as though you've just walked in on something you were never supposed to see. Your voice sticks in your throat. Not that you were planning to speak, but if you tried, nothing would have come out. You take a step forward without realizing it. The one watching you stops humming. The others falter for half a second, then carry on. Her gaze doesn't leave yours. Slowly, her mouth twists into something that might have been a smile once, but isn't anymore. She whispers something. It's too quiet to hear. You lean in. And then she says it again, and you wish you hadn't. They're in the air. The words are flat matter, of fact. As if she's telling you the time of day. She coughs. Once, then again harder. The others don't react, they just keep humming. But the sound is different now, hollowed out somehow. You back toward the stairs. As you descend, the humming fades, replaced by the pounding of your own pulse in your ears. The moment your feet hit the ground floor, you hear the church door slam. You didn't close it. When you turn, the figure from the field is inside, still staring. The distance between you is small, but you can see them clearly now. Their skin is mottled, not dirt, not shadow. Buboes, black and purple, swell along the neck and jaw. The smell hits next, sweet and rotten. They open their mouth. No words, just a wet, rattling breath. You run. Out the door, past the field, through the village. The air feels thicker now, harder to breathe. Every house you pass seems closer, like the walls are leaning in to watch you go. And then you hear it. Coughs. Dozens of them. Coming from the houses with the red crosses. They weren't empty after all. You don't stop until the village is gone behind you, swallowed by the trees. Your chest aches. Your throat burns. You tell yourself it's just from running. You keep telling yourself that for hours. By nightfall, The first fever sets in. You don't remember when you stopped walking, only that the ground was cold when you woke up. The stars above look sharper, almost too bright. Every breath feels heavier than the last. And somewhere far off, you swear you can still hear the humming. You wake to voices. Not friendly ones. It takes a few seconds to realize you're in a cart. The wooden planks beneath you bounce and rattle with every turn of the wheels, and the sky above is hidden by a patchwork tarp that smells faintly of sheep and very strongly of something worse. When you shift, something rolls against your arm. You look down. It's a foot, still attached to someone, which is slightly better than the alternative. The man beside you is young, maybe younger than you, but his skin is waxy, his lips parted just enough to let a strand of drool escape. His eyes are open, but they're not looking at anything in this world anymore. A voice from outside calls something sharp in a dialect you half recognize, and the cart lurches. More bodies shift against you. It's a plague cart. Congratulations. You've skipped straight past. Maybe I'm fine. 2. I am transportation cargo for the dead. The smell is everywhere. Sweet, cloying. The kind of stench that feels like it coats your teeth from the inside. You breathe shallow, which doesn't help. The cart finally stops. Hands pull the tarp away and daylight hits you like a slap. A man in a hood peers in. His eyes meet yours, and there's a flicker. Recognition. Pity. Maybe just the mild annoyance of someone whose job description did not include sorting the almost dead from the already dead. You walk? He asks. You nod. He shrugs. Then walk. You climb down, legs unsteady. The street is dirt, but it's churned into mud from too many feet, too many carts. Dogs loiter along the edges, watching with the patient hunger of creatures who know their next meal is inevitable. The cart rattles away. You stand in the middle of the road, not quite sure where to go. The village here is larger than the one you ran from, but the same signs are everywhere. Red crosses on doors, windows boarded from the outside. And yet people move in the streets. Not many, and all of them keep a distance as if an invisible rope circles you. You touch your face without thinking. Bad idea. One woman sees you do it and spits in the dirt, muttering something that definitely isn't a blessing. You make for the church. The door is open, and the air inside is cool. A priest stands near the altar, lighting a candle with the focus of a man trying very hard to pretend nothing outside his walls exists. When he sees you, his hand freezes halfway to the wick. His eyes drop to your neck. How long? He asks. Since when? You counter, which is not the reassuring answer he was looking for. He sighs. There's a hospice on the far end of town. Go there. You don't move. What's in the hospice? He gives you a look that says you already know, and maybe you do, but you go anyway. The building is large, converted from what might have been a merchant's house. Inside, the air is warm, humid. Beds line the walls, each with a figure sprawled under thin blankets. The sound is constant, coughing, groaning, the wet rattle of breath that seems to vibrate in your own lungs just hearing it. A woman approaches, wearing a linen veil over her head and a cloth mask that's more wishful thinking than medical protection. She touches your forehead briefly, nods to herself, and guides you to an empty bed. You lie down. That's the moment you realize the humor in all those old drawings, the ones where death is just there, casual, hanging out. You understand now why he's always smiling. He's been here the whole time. The woman gives you water, and for a moment you forget to be afraid. Fever makes the ceiling ripple, and the room feels further away. Someone down the row starts screaming. No one rushes to stop it. The sound dies down on its own. By nightfall, you've counted at least 3 beds go empty. The cart outside creaks away again. You close your eyes and picture yourself somewhere else. Anywhere else. But the air in your chest is thick and heavy, and the smell clings to your skin like a shadow you can't wash off. Somewhere far off, beyond the hospice walls, bells begin to toll. You lose count after the 10th chime. You wake before dawn, which is an achievement considering the chorus of coughing that never really stops through the night. The air in the hospice feels heavier, warmer, as if the walls are quietly sweating with everyone else. You turn your head, and the man in the next bed is staring at you. Not looking, staring. His eyes are glassy, and his chest rises just enough to prove he hasn't joined the night's tolly. Yet, when you sit up, the world tilts. The fever hasn't hit its stride, but it's limbering up in the wings, waiting for its entrance. The woman from yesterday appears, moving between beds with the calm efficiency of someone who has accepted that she will never save everyone, maybe not even half. She hands you a piece of bread. It's hard enough to chip a tooth, but you chew anyway. "You should eat," she says. You glance around at the others, the ones who aren't eating. They don't. They can't. She answers simply, then moves on. The bread tastes of ash and something faintly bitter. You don't ask what flour was used. Some questions don't need answers. When the sunlight finally spills through the warped shutters, you hear shouting outside. Not angry shouting, bargaining. You rise, wobbling, and peek through a crack. The market is in full swing. Calling it a market is generous. It's a row of stalls, most half empty, with sellers eyeing each other like wolves deciding which one of them will be eaten first. Chickens in wicker cages cluck nervously. A man sells onions from a basket at twice the price you heard in the last village. Coins change hands cautiously, as if they might carry the plague themselves, which, frankly, they probably do. You decide to go outside. The fresh air is worth the risk. The first thing you notice is the smell. It's the same as the hospice, just spread thin enough to let other odors sneak in. Baking bread from somewhere distant. Wood smoke, the sharp tang of vinegar someone's splashing on their doorstep. People wear charms around their necks, sprigs of herbs tied in little bundles. Some have stuffed flowers into the folds of their clothes, breathing through petals as if nature itself might filter the air. A man in bright red robes walks through the market, and the crowd parts for him. His mask is the strangest thing you've ever seen. Long, bird-like, with glass lenses over the eyes. He carries a stick, which he uses to prod anyone who gets too close. You've seen drawings of these plague doctors before. In person, they're worse. He stops at a stall, examines a basket of pears, then moves on without buying anything. His gaze flickers over you for the briefest moment, and even through the mask, you can feel the silent assessment worth saving, worth avoiding. He chooses the second. By midday, the market thins. People disappear behind doors, latching them with more force than necessary. A cart rolls past carrying barrels of water, the driver shouting prices that make you laugh. Not because they're funny, but because they're absurd. And here's the thing, if you had a little coin, you might survive longer. Not survive, but buy yourself a few more days before the fever takes hold. In times like these, death doesn't just choose at random, it takes bribes. The afternoon brings another change music. Not lively music, but a slow, mournful tune played on a lute somewhere up the street. The notes drift like smoke, curling between buildings, settling in your ribs. You follow the sound without thinking. It leads you to a square where a small crowd has gathered. In the center, a man sings. His voice is clear, almost too clear. Like he's been spared the rasp everyone else has. The song isn't about God or the plague. It's about a girl he met at the river last spring, and how her smile was worth every danger in the world. No one claps when he finishes. They just stand there, soaking in the sound like people trying to memorize what joy felt like. You feel it too. The reminder that there's more to this world than illness and fear. Then someone coughs in the crowd, and the moment shatters. People step back instantly, as if the cough were a knife. The singer lowers his lute, nods to no one in particular, and leaves. You return to the hospice that night to find 3 more beds empty. The woman has a smudge of ash on her veil, and you realize she's been to the pyres. She doesn't say it. She doesn't need to. That's when you notice something: the city isn't just fighting a disease, it's unraveling. Prices climb by the day, neighbors stop helping neighbors, and the watchmen at the gates demand inspection fees to let carts in. The poor suffer first, but the cracks are spreading upward. You hear whispers about houses left abandoned overnight, about merchants slipping away with their goods, about whole streets sealing themselves off with makeshift barricades. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you don't move soon, you'll be stuck when the city locks itself down completely. That night, you dream of the road, of walking under the open sky, the air cold and clean, no sound but the crunch of your boots and the distant call of crows. You wake to bells. Again, always the bells. The bells don't stop this time. They ring through the fog, steady as a heartbeat, then quicken like something is chasing them. You know before you open your eyes that this isn't the usual morning tolly. When you step outside, the street feels different. Quieter, but tense, like a room just after someone shouts. A group of watchmen march past, their boots slick with mud, carrying hammers and planks. They don't look at you. They don't look at anyone. By the time you follow them to the main road, you see what they're doing. The city gates, the ones you passed through just days ago, are being shut. Not the polite, closed for the night kind. This is sealing. They're nailing boards across the heavy doors, wedging stones into gaps, leaving no space big enough for a desperate body to squeeze through. A woman runs toward them, shouting something about her sister in the next village, about needing to leave. She doesn't make it within 10 steps before one of the watchmen levels his spear. The message is clear: no one leaves. No one enters. You feel your stomach tighten. That dream of the road, the clean air, gone. The rest of the city gets the news quickly, though not from any official announcement. News travels faster when it's bad. By midday you hear arguments in the market, louder than before. Someone's accusing someone else of hoarding flour. A man throws a cabbage in response. It's almost comical until you notice the bruises under his eyes, the way his hand shakes from hunger. You go back to the hospice, but the crowd outside stops you. They're not here to visit the sick. They're here to beg for a place inside. Just a bed. One man pleads. We'll work, we'll clean. The woman from before stands at the door, hands steady, voice calm, turning them all away. You understand why. There's no space left, no herbs, no spare hands. But understanding doesn't make it easier to watch. By the second night of the lockdown, the city starts eating itself. Not literally, not yet. But the signs are there. Bread runs out first, then onions, then salt. The smell of vinegar fades from the streets because no one can spare it for cleansing. And then the riots begin. It starts with a rumor. Someone saw a cart of grain hidden in a merchant's cellar. People gather in front of his house, calling his name, demanding he open the doors. When he doesn't, they break them. By the time you arrive, the street is chaos. People running with armfuls of flour, tripping over each other. White dust clinging to their clothes like frost. The merchant's wife is screaming. The merchant is nowhere to be seen. You know what they'll say tomorrow? That this was necessary. That in desperate times, there are no thieves, only survivors. That night, you don't sleep. Not because of the noise, though there is plenty. But because you realize something that shakes you more than the sickness ever could. You're not afraid of the plague anymore. You're afraid of the people. By the third day, the watchmen have stopped patrolling. They stay near the gates, protecting the sealed exits, leaving the inner streets to their own devices. A new sound replaces their marching, the breaking of wood. Windows smashed for entry. Doors kicked open. Furniture turned to firewood. One morning you find the hospice door barred from the inside. When you ask why, the woman says simply, "Last night someone tried to get in." She doesn't say whether they made it. You're sitting in the dim light, chewing the last of the hard bread she gave you, when the bells ring again. This time, they're not for the dead. They're for a fire. You run toward the smoke. Because of course you do. We all chase the thing that might kill us, and find it's not one fire but several. A row of houses near the market is burning. Some say it was an accident. Others say it was done on purpose, to cleanse the area of disease. You watch as the flames lick the sky, the heat prickling your skin even from across the street. A man stands next to you, face lit by the glow, and mutters, "Better ash than pestilence." You don't answer him. You're not sure you agree. When the fire dies, the street is a skeleton of black beams and collapsed roofs. The smell, charred wood, burnt cloth, and something worse, lingers in your hair and clothes. That night, you think about leaving again. About climbing the walls, slipping past the guards. But then you imagine the road. Empty, yes, but littered with bodies. The villages along the way no better than this one. The truth settles heavy on your chest. There is no safe place. Not anymore. The next morning, you wake to find the woman gone. No note, no trace. Someone says they saw her walking toward the gates before sunrise, But you know she wouldn't be let through. Unless she wasn't walking out. Unless she was carried. And here's the thing you're not sure you want to know. The city is quiet for the first time since you arrived. Not peaceful. Never that. But subdued, like it's holding its breath. You wonder what it's waiting for. You'll find out soon enough. It starts with a smell. Not the rotting sweetness of the streets. You've grown numb to that. But something sharper. Medicinal almost, like herbs crushed underfoot. It's so out of place here that you follow it curious. You find the source in the square. A man in a long robe, face hidden by a beaked mask, is sprinkling a trail of dried rosemary, lavender, and wormwood. The mask is grotesque. A bird's face stretched to human size, glass lenses for eyes. Children peek from doorways to watch, their faces pale and smudged. The man doesn't speak to anyone. He just walks, sprinkling herbs, as if the line will somehow block the plague. People whisper that he's a plague doctor, that he knows secrets. That if you pay him enough, he can keep your family safe. But his steps never falter, and you realize, whether or not it works, he believes it. And belief is contagious too. A group of women trail after him, mimicking his movements, tossing handfuls of whatever they can find. Sage, hay, even shredded cabbage leaves, as if the air itself can be swept clean. By noon, the wind picks up and carries the herbs away. The plague doesn't care. In the hospice, the beds are full. Not just full, layered. 2, sometimes 3 people sharing a space meant for 1, because the dying can't wait for the dead to move. The air is thick with fever, sweat, and vinegar. Every cough sounds like a sentence. You spend hours fetching water from the well. It's a long walk, and you carry the bucket with both hands, trying not to spill. On the way back, you pass a man collapsed in the road. People step around him like he's a fallen sack of grain. You want to help, but you also want to keep breathing. You walk faster. That night the bells ring again. This time, you don't bother counting. Days blend together. You start to measure time by who's missing. The market is almost empty now. A handful of stalls sell what's left: shriveled turnips, stale bread, one sad rabbit. A woman offers you a jar of honey for the price of a silver coin. You laugh before you realize she's serious. One morning, you wake to find the street outside covered in chalk marks. White X's on certain doors. A neighbor tells you it means the sick are inside. That the watchman will come by later to seal them in. You're about to ask what that means when you hear the hammering. A group of men moves from house to house, boarding up the doors and windows from the outside. You stand frozen as they nail shut the home of an old man you've seen every day since you arrived. He shouts from inside, but no one answers. The boards rattle long after they leave. You stop sleeping well. Every creak of the floorboards sounds like hammering now. Every cough in the hospice feels louder. And yet, and this is the strange thing, life keeps happening. In the middle of all this, someone bakes bread. Someone sings. A boy in the street chases a rat with a stick, laughing as if this is just another game. It makes you wonder if survival isn't about avoiding death, but pretending it isn't there. Then, one afternoon the rain comes. Not a drizzle, not a polite tap, tap on the rooftops, but a downpour so heavy the streets turn to rivers in minutes. People rush outside, holding pots, bowls, anything to catch the water. The air smells clean for the first time in weeks. You stand in it until you're soaked through, your hair plastered to your face, your clothes heavy. For a moment, it feels like the city is breathing again. But when the rain stops, the smell returns, stronger than before. The next morning, the square is different. Quieter. There's a crowd, but no shouting, no bargaining. They're watching something. You push through and see him. The plague doctor, lying on the cobblestones, his mask tilted to one side, herbs scattered around him. No one touches him. No one dares. Someone whispers, "If he couldn't survive, what chance do we have?" You feel the words sink into your bones. By the end of the week, the hospice runs out of candles. You work in the dark, guided by the sound of breathing, and the silence where breathing used to be. Every night, you tell yourself tomorrow will be better. Every morning, you're wrong, and still, you stay. Because leaving isn't the same as surviving. It begins with the statues. Someone, no one knows who, has tied scraps of cloth around their stone necks, like talismans against the plague. By morning, Every statue in the square has them. Saints, kings, even the grim gargoyle above the church door wears a faded strip of red linen. People say the color scares the sickness away. They say the plague can't cross red, which is nonsense, of course. But in a city where logic has been exiled with the last healthy doctors, nonsense is starting to look like a leader. The priests still hold mass, but the church feels different now. The prayers are louder, more desperate, almost frantic. When the incense burns, it's not to honor God. It's to drown the smell. You kneel beside strangers whose hands tremble as they cross themselves, and you can't tell if they're shaking from fever or fear. Rumors arrive faster than the carts carrying the dead. One says the Jews poisoned the wells. Another blames the stars. Another swears the plague is God's punishment for wearing shoes made in Florence. It doesn't matter that none of it makes sense. People aren't looking for truth anymore. They're looking for someone to blame. You see it happen one afternoon. A merchant accused of bringing the sickness is dragged into the street. There's no trial, no proof. Just shouting, hands grabbing, and then he's gone, swallowed by the crowd. When it disperses, you don't ask where he went. Night falls earlier now. The air grows colder, damp with a kind of creeping mist that clings to your clothes. The city starts to look different in the half-light. Shadows stretch longer, alleys twist deeper, and every footstep echoes like it's following you. One night, you hear singing. At first, you think it's the hospice again, someone trying to lift spirits. But when you follow the sound, you find a group of people circling a fire in the square, chanting words you don't recognize. Their faces are smeared with ash, their clothes torn. They don't look sick, but their eyes look like they've already seen the end. They dance until they collapse. By the next day, more people have joined them. And the day after that, it spreads, this strange ritual. Men, women, even children moving in circles until they can't move at all. Some say they're trying to dance the plague out of their bodies. Others say they're just trying to forget they have won. The hospice grows quieter as more people go to the square instead of their beds. You watch from the shadows one night as a woman dances until her knees buckle, her face lifted toward the moon. When they carry her away, you can't tell if she's breathing. Food runs short. Not just because of sickness, because fewer people are willing to risk the market. Bread that was stale last week is a treasure now. One evening, you barter a strip of cloth for a half-rotten apple and feel like you've won something. The city watch starts locking the gates at night, supposedly to keep strangers out, but you suspect it's to keep the madness in. You test them one evening, walking close to the walls. The guards watch you the whole time, hands on their spears. Inside, the rituals grow stranger. Someone hangs a dead crow above their door. Someone else paints their entire body in blue dye and refuses to speak, as if silence itself can hide them from death. And still, the carts keep rolling. It's during one of these grim parades that you hear the story of a house across the river, where no one has fallen sick. No one knows why. Some say they drink only boiled wine. Others whisper about charms hidden under the floorboards. You decide to see it for yourself. The journey takes you through streets you've avoided for weeks, places where the smell is worse, the silence heavier. When you find the house, it's nothing special. Just a timber frame, a thatched roof, a faded blue door. But the people inside look healthy. Not untouched, exactly, but brighter somehow. They tell you their secret is simple, they never let fear in. You almost laugh. Fear is the only thing that's kept you alive this long. But you also know, maybe they're right. Maybe letting it in is the first step toward letting it win. You walk back through the city with their words in your head. The streets feel the same. The smell hasn't changed. The bells still ring, but for the first time in weeks, you wonder if surviving isn't just about keeping your body alive. It's about keeping something else alive too. Something you're not sure you still have. It happens so quietly at first that you almost miss it. One morning, the bells don't ring. No mournful toll for the dead, no call to prayer. The square is silent except for the crows, their wings like creaking doors as they hop from roof to roof. You tell yourself the bell ringer must be sick, but the next day it's the same. By the third day, you know, the priest is gone. The church door stands open, and inside, The candles have burned down to little puddles of wax. Someone has taken the silver chalice. The confessional smells of rot. The holy water font is dry. You see the absence everywhere now. The market has no watchman. The city gates hang open in the wind. The herald who used to shout the day's news is nowhere to be found, his wooden stool lying on its side in the mud. There is no one in charge anymore. At first, this feels like freedom. No taxes, no curfews. No one to stop you from taking that loaf of bread if it's just sitting there. You almost convince yourself the plague has left you with something, a kind of lawless paradise. But paradise rots quickly. With no watch, the thieves work in daylight. You see them strip a man's house bare, while he's still inside it, too weak to move. The baker's shop is smashed open, his flour spilling into the street like pale blood. No one helps. The rules start to change in ways you can't predict. On one street, neighbors agree to leave food for each other, to keep some order alive. 2 streets over, they chase a sick woman out with stones. And still the sickness moves. It takes the young now, not just the old. The ones who thought they were safe. You hear of a boy who was running errands for his family, healthy in the morning, gone before sundown. The carts have stopped running. There are too many bodies and too few hands. The dead are buried where they fall, or not at all. You pass a doorway where someone has been lying for days, a shape under a thin blanket. No one will go near. The river becomes a grave. One afternoon, you see them. 4 men carrying something heavy wrapped in cloth. They don't bother with prayers or a coffin. They just tip it into the water and watch it sink. The water is the city's lifeline. You drink from it, wash in it, cook with it. Now you look at it differently. Hunger drives you to the fields beyond the walls. The crops have gone wild without hands to tend them. But you're not the only one searching. A family is there already, pulling onions from the ground like treasure. You nod at each other but don't speak. Silence is the only safe agreement left. When you return to the city, you find the square transformed. A man stands on a crate, his face painted with soot, his voice hoarse as he declares himself keeper of the living. Around him, people are listening, actually listening, as if desperate for any figure who looks like a leader. His rules are simple: share food, keep the gates closed at night, burn the dead. For a while it works. The square feels almost safe again, until someone refuses to give up their bread. It starts with shouting, then a shove, then the kind of silence that means someone has fallen and isn't getting up again. You watch the keeper drag the body away. No one asks what happens next. The fires begin soon after. First, it's to burn the houses of the dead, to purify the air. Then it's to burn the houses of the suspected thieves. Then it's to burn anyone who stands against the keeper's rules. The smoke curls over the rooftops day and night. Some people leave, slipping away through the gates and into the countryside. But there's nowhere safe to go. The plague travels faster than footsteps. You hear stories of whole villages gone before the news even reaches the city. And yet, not everyone is afraid. There are those who have decided the plague is proof that the end is near. They walk the streets barefoot, whipping themselves bloody, chanting for God's mercy. They believe their suffering will save the world. The keeper doesn't stop them. Maybe he thinks it's better to let madness burn itself out than try to fight it. The city smells of smoke and sickness, but also something else now, something sharp, almost metallic. Fear has a scent, and you've learned to recognize it. You start to move differently. Never down the same street twice. Never standing in a doorway too long. Your ears pick up the sound of footsteps that don't belong to you. Your eyes notice hands lingering too close to your pouch. One night you hear voices outside your door, low arguing. You hold your breath, clutching the only weapon you have, a rusted kitchen knife. The voices fade, but you don't sleep again until dawn. Days blur. The keeper disappears, just like the priest did. No one knows if he's dead, fled, or simply stopped caring. A new man takes his place, younger, with a crueler smile. His rules are different. More punishment, less protection. The fires burn higher. You find yourself wondering if the plague is still the worst thing here. One evening, you climb to the roof to watch the sunset, something you haven't done since the sickness began. The sky is the color of blood and ash. The city looks quiet from up here, almost peaceful. But you know that under those rooftops, people are starving, hiding, planning. And you know that if you stay, one day soon, someone will knock on your door, and it won't be to ask for help. That night, you decide. You pack what little you have. A crust of bread, a flask of water, the knife. You wait until the moon is high, until the streets are as empty as they ever get. And then you walk, past the square, past the church, past the gate with its broken lock. Beyond the walls, the road stretches into darkness. You don't know where it leads. You don't know if there's anywhere left to go. But you walk anyway. Because in a city where the sickness has killed the body, and the lawlessness has killed the soul, walking away might be the only kind of survival left. You've been walking for less than an hour before the city's noise. The fires, the shouting, the occasional scream is gone, replaced by something far more dangerous: silence. The kind of silence that feels like it's watching you. Your boots crunch on the gravel road, and each step sounds too loud, like it's announcing you to whatever might be out here. The moon is behind the clouds, making the world a patchwork of shifting shadow and dim silver. The road itself feels different, softer somehow, as though no cartwheel has touched it for weeks. You tell yourself the countryside will be safer. Fewer people means fewer carriers of the sickness. But already you feel that gnawing suspicion. Maybe that also means fewer people to help you. A mile out, you pass the first farmhouse. The shutters are closed, the door barred from the inside. You knock once, just in case. No answer. You knock again, louder this time. But the only response is the distant barking of a dog. A sound that stops far too suddenly, like someone called it away. You keep walking. Every building you pass is the same. Closed, silent, unwelcoming. In some windows, you swear you see movement, but when you blink, it's gone. The air smells faintly of wood smoke and something else, something sour and old. By dawn, you're far enough from the city that you can no longer see the spire of the church. You're also hungry. The bread in your pack is hard enough to break teeth, but you eat it anyway, chewing slow to make it last. That's when you hear it. At first you think it's the wind. But no, wind doesn't sound like whispering. It's coming from the hedgerow to your right. You freeze, hand on your knife. The whispering stops. You step forward, nothing moves. Then, out of the brambles, a shape rises. Small, hunched, wrapped in a filthy cloak. You can't see their face under the hood. But the voice is that of an old woman. "Don't go that way," she says. Her voice is cracked dry, like parchment. "Why?" you ask. She doesn't answer. Just turns and limps back into the trees, vanishing as if she was never there. The road she warned you about curves ahead, dipping into a shallow valley. You hesitate, but really, what choice do you have? You follow it. The valley feels wrong the moment you step into it. The grass here is yellowed, the trees thin and brittle. A farmhouse stands at the far end, its door swinging open on broken hinges. Inside, you find the smell first, heavy, choking thick with death. The kitchen table is overturned, chairs scattered. Upstairs, you discover what's left of the family. You leave without touching anything. By the time you're out of the valley, the sun is low again. That's when you see smoke ahead. Not the black, oily smoke of burning buildings. This is pale, almost white, curling from a small campfire. Two men sit beside it. They're dressed like travelers, but their eyes watch you too carefully. Lost. One asks, his tone just a little too friendly. You shake your head. Just passing through. They exchange a glance. Then maybe you should pass through here. You keep your knife in sight as you skirt the camp. Neither man moves to stop you, but you can feel their gaze on your back long after the fire has faded from view. That night, you sleep in the ruins of a chapel. The roof is gone, but the stone walls keep the wind at bay. You wake twice, once to the sound of an owl, and once to the sound of footsteps that stop just outside before fading away. Morning brings mist, thick and cold. It muffles the world, turning the road into a pale ribbon you can barely follow. Shapes loom out of the fog. A fence, a cart, a dead horse lying stiff in its harness. You hear the church bells before you see the village. The sound is strange, not mournful, but frantic. When the mist clears, you see why. The villagers are in the square, ringing the bells themselves, as if trying to drive something away. Some beat drums, others shout prayers. The moment they see you, the noise stops, A man steps forward, his eyes bloodshot. Outsiders bring the plague, he says. You try to tell them you're healthy, but you've left the sickness behind. But they don't care. They drive you back with pitchforks and curses until you're outside the village again. The bells start up the moment you're gone. By the third day on the road, you realize there's no such thing as safety anymore. The sickness is everywhere. In the cities, the villages, the empty fields. You start to recognize the signs, shuttered windows, overgrown paths. Laundry left hanging until it rots on the line. Sometimes you see smoke in the distance and change direction. Sometimes you hear voices and hide until they pass. Trust has become a luxury you can't afford. Food runs low. You eat roots, berries, whatever you can find. The water you drink tastes of iron. Your dreams grow strange. Faces of the dead you've never met, streets you've never walked, all melting into each other. On the seventh night, you find yourself back at a crossroads. One path leads deeper into the countryside, the other back toward the city, and for a moment, you actually think about it. At least in the city you knew the rules. Out here, the dangers wear too many faces. The hungry, the desperate, the superstitious, and the sickness itself. But the thought passes. You keep walking away. And somewhere behind you, in the fog, you think you hear footsteps following. You don't look back right away. It's better not to. You tell yourself. If you don't turn, maybe it's just the wind shifting in the trees, or the way your own footsteps echo. But you know it isn't. The road is narrow here, hemmed in by hedgerows that rise taller than a man. The leaves shiver in the windless air, and somewhere in the green wall, a bird darts out, startled by something that isn't you. You walk faster. The sound behind you matches your pace. Finally, you glance over your shoulder. At first you see nothing. The mist makes every shadow look alive. Then, there, a figure, half hidden, keeping distance but never stopping. Tall, wrapped in a dark cloak. Too far to see their face. You keep walking. Pretend you haven't noticed. The day drags on like that. Always the sound, always the shape behind you. Not close enough to threaten, but never far enough to forget. By late afternoon, the clouds are boiling in the sky, the kind that promise rain. The light goes strange, dim but golden, like the world's holding its breath. You reach an abandoned toll house as the first drops fall. The roof still holds, the door hangs crooked but functional. You slip inside, light a small fire with the last of your dry kindling, and wait. For a time, the only sound is rain ticking against the stones. You almost convince yourself the figure won't come in after all. Then the door creaks. They don't speak. Just step in, shut the door, and stand dripping in the half-dark. The hood hides their face, but their hands are bare, pale and trembling. Do you mean me harm? You ask. A pause. Then a voice, low, hoarse. No. But you should not be alone. You study them. Their clothes are travel-worn, the hems crusted with mud. Something in the way they hold themselves. Too still, like every movement is calculated. Tells you they've been watching you longer than you realized. Why? You press. They take a step closer to the fire, stretching their hands to the heat. Because the sick are moving. Whole villages emptying into the roads. There are worse things than the plague now. You don't ask what they mean. You already know. You've seen the hunger in people's eyes, the suspicion, the desperation. Then why follow me? The figure hesitates. Because you're going where I'm going. The rain keeps falling. You let them stay. You don't sleep well. Every time you close your eyes, you see them standing over you, silent, waiting. But morning comes without incident. And the stranger is already awake, packing their few belongings into a bundle. The two of you walk without talking for hours. The air smells of wet earth and something faintly metallic, the aftermath of rain. Fields stretch on either side, broken by the occasional blackened farmhouse. By midday, you reach a river. The bridge has been burned, only charred beams jutting from the water. The stranger leads you downstream to a ford, the current cold enough to numb your legs. That's when you see the bodies. Not fresh, bloated, tangled in the reeds. Their clothes mark them as soldiers, though whatever banners they once wore are gone. The stranger stares for a long time, then turns away. You were in the war, you ask. A small nod. Long before the sickness. Different death, same stench. The road on the other side is worse. Churned mud, the ruts filled with water, flanked by hedges that look clawed at by desperate hands. You pass an overturned cart with one wheel missing, the contents long since scavenged. By evening, you smell smoke again. Not the thin thread of a campfire, but the heavy clinging stink of something larger. Around the next bend, you see it. A village burning. Not just a house or two, but all of it. The roofs collapse in showers of sparks, the air alive with the crackle of flame. Shapes move among the fire, not firefighters, but people carrying away whatever they can. Their faces are smeared with soot, their eyes wild. The stranger grabs your arm. Don't stop. You keep your head down, moving past the scene as fast as you can without running. One of the looters shouts something, but doesn't follow. The heat still clings to your skin long after the village is gone. That night, you make camp in a stand of trees. The stranger finally tells you their name, or at least, something they claim is their name. You tell them yours, though you wonder if you should have lied. Before sleep, they say, we're 2 days from the coast. Ships are leaving for the north. It's the first time in weeks you've heard the word, leaving in a way that doesn't mean running from something. The idea sticks in your head as you drift into uneasy dreams. In the morning, the world feels heavier, as if the road itself knows you're closer to something that might be an end. Or a beginning. The stranger walks ahead now, scanning the horizon. The land smells of salt before you can see the sea. And then, suddenly, there it is. A strip of steel, grey water under a sky bruised with clouds. Between you and it is one last town. And as you step into its outskirts, you realize there are no bells, no fires, no shouting. Just silence. The kind of silence you've learned to fear. You don't like this silence. It's not the soft, peaceful kind you might find in a sleepy hamlet on a spring morning, when the only sounds are roosters and the occasional bleating goat. No. This is the kind of silence that feels like the air has been holding its breath for too long. A silence that presses on your ears, until you almost want to shout just to prove you still exist. The road into town is paved with cobblestones, slick from recent rain, the gaps between them choked with moss. A wooden sign, its paint weathered to illegibility, creaks on rusty hinges in the wind. Somewhere above you, a shutter bangs against the side of a building in a slow, rhythmic way. Not frantic, just lonely. The stranger walks ahead, the hood still up, their boots splashing in shallow puddles. Every few steps they glance left and right, scanning the narrow streets. You realize their hand keeps drifting toward the knife at their belt, almost unconsciously. The buildings lean close together here. The upper floors so near you could reach out from one window and shake hands with your neighbor, if there were any neighbors left. But the windows are empty. Not smashed, not boarded, just open. The smell hits you then. Not the sharp, sweet stench of the freshly dead, but something older, flatter. It's the smell of wood and cloth left to rot in the damp, of food gone to mold, of a place abandoned long enough for time to start chewing at the edges. You pause beside a doorway where the wood is splintered but not kicked in. Someone left in a hurry, yes, but not by force. Your mind races with possibilities. Did they all leave together? Were they driven out? Did the sickness reach here too quickly for anyone to bury their dead? The stranger doesn't stop. Keep moving, they mutter, their voice low enough that it could be mistaken for the wind. You do, weaving between carts left in the street, barrels split open and emptied. In one place, you see a child's doll-lying face, down in a puddle, one glass eye staring up at the grey sky. You think of picking it up. You even crouch for a moment. But something about the way it's lying feels wrong, as if the moment you touch it, you'll learn exactly why this town is so quiet. You keep walking. The silence starts to change. It's still heavy, still unnatural, but beneath it, you hear faint sounds, a creak of wood, a whisper of movement. Too soft to pinpoint, but there. Your pulse picks up. The main street ends in a small square where a stone well sits in the center. The bucket is still attached to the rope, but the rope has frayed halfway down and dangles into darkness. Around the square, shop fronts stand open. A baker's, a blacksmith's, a cooper's workshop. The bakery still has a few loaves on a tray inside, their crusts white with mold. The stranger circles the square once, then motions you toward an inn on the far side. The sign above the door, a faded painting of a ship with full sails, sways on rusty chains. You step inside, the floorboards groaning beneath your weight. The common room is dim, lit only by the light filtering through the grime-coated windows. A few chairs lie on their sides, one table overturned. On another table, someone's left a clay mug of ale that's gone cloudy with age. The stranger heads straight for the stairs at the back. You follow, the wood creaking under each step. On the second floor, the hallway smells faintly of mildew. Doors stand open into rooms where beds are still unmade, belongings scattered as though their owners simply got up one morning and never came back. In one room, the bed is neatly made, but the pillow has a faint indentation. Like someone lay there just yesterday. There's dust on everything else, except the pillow. You and the stranger exchange a look. From somewhere below, a sound, soft, a scrape. The stranger gestures for you to stay and moves silently toward the stairs, knife in hand. But the moment their foot hits the first step, the sound comes again, from above this time. The two of you freeze. Slowly, you both turn your heads toward the ceiling. The sound is coming from the attic. The stranger moves first, climbing the narrow set of steps hidden at the end of the hallway. You follow, because you've learned by now that staying behind feels worse than facing whatever's ahead. The attic is low, ceilinged, the beams thick with cobwebs. The light is dim, the air heavy with dust. At first, you see nothing, just crates, an old spinning wheel, a trunk with the lid half open. Then something shifts in the shadows. A figure crouches in the far corner, wrapped in a blanket so filthy, you can't tell its original color. The face that peers out is thin, eyes huge and fever bright. Their lips move, but the words are too soft to hear. The stranger steps forward, crouching to meet the figure's gaze. "Are you alone?" they ask. A shake of the head. Your stomach tightens. "Where are the others?" The stranger presses. The figure's eyes flick toward the window. You follow the glance and see it. Movement outside in the square below. Shapes. People. No, not people. Not exactly. They move too slowly, their postures wrong. Some are bent at the waist, others shuffle sideways like their joints no longer work right. Their clothes hang in tatters, their skin grey with sickness. Even from here, you can see the swell of buboes under their rags. The figure in the attic whispers a single word, and now you hear it clearly. They're waiting. By the time the plague loosened its grip, it had already taken one in every 3 people in Europe. The streets where you once heard the hiss of bread ovens and the chatter of market gossip now lay silent, save for the creak of empty carts. The world had shrunk, not in maps or in borders, but in the faces missing from your table. And if you think you'd have been different, that your cleverness, your hygiene, your modern immune system would have given you an edge, well, I have some bad news. The plague didn't care if you were brave, brilliant, or careful. It didn't even care if you prayed. All it needed was for you to breathe, just once, in the wrong place. You wouldn't have survived, because survival then wasn't about strength, or skill, or even luck. It was about the cruel arithmetic of history, the kind where the numbers were decided before you ever got to count them. The survivors didn't beat the plague. They simply weren't chosen. And as you close your eyes tonight, remember it never really went away. It sleeps, deep in the earth, in the fur of rats, in the bite of fleas, in the quiet. Waiting. Patient as it has always been.